Isn't postmodernism dead? A lot of thinkers today believe that postmodernism has died out. We don't think it has. We think it has merely matured, mutated, and evolved, at least twice since the 1960s, and that the two principles and four themes are still pervasive and culturally influential. Theory is intact, although the ways in which its core principles and themes are presented, used, and interacted with have changed significantly over the last 50 years. Its current application is what concerns us most. There are many arguments about when exactly postmodernism allegedly died. What we call postmodern theory's high deconstructive phase burnt itself out by the mid-1980s. But did postmodernism and theory end there? No. Far from dying out, these ideas evolved and diversified into distinct strands. They became more goal and action-oriented by combining with another school of thought called critical theory, which was made especially by and for radical activists. We call the next wave of activism scholarship applied postmodernism, and we'll dive into that next.
I would want people to think that postmodernism is dead. It seems like the goal. Like, they want me to think
that none of this is happening, that these ideas don't still have sway.
This postmodern neo-Marxist, that can't be a thing. That's stupid. You're thinking that exists.
Yeah, I saw a guy who finally officially started declaring himself as one. For so long, people wouldn't even call themselves that. And he's a PhD philosopher. But because of books like these, that they're getting pinned down into it, they're getting exposed enough that they're saying, okay, yeah. Because so much of this is, I think it was Richard Dawkins said that it was trying to like nail Jello to the wall, trying to describe it or say what it is. But the Jello is getting nailed to the wall. And part of the deal with it, going back to informed consent, my whole entire angle on all this is that I think people should know about stuff. I think you should learn about stuff. I think people should read the people I disagree with and learn what they are, whereas they'll get on some sort of things like you shouldn't listen to who we disagree with. You're not allowed to even see it. And I say if everybody read and looked at it hard enough, they'd understand that it's a problem, but also the Jello will get nailed to the wall. You'll know that what we're talking about is there. It exists. It's not Schrodinger's theory. It's there. It's always been there, and it's around us, and it's ubiquitous and everywhere, and it's moving into everything. And maybe you like it. Go read it, and maybe you love it. Maybe you want to get into it. Fine. My belief is, on average, if all of society read it, enough people would be against it that we'd be fine. And if you like it, fine.
So to wrap this up, they divide postmodernism into the high deconstructive phase that had died out by the 1980s. And that's where we're looking at these ideas as they existed in the 1980s. We're seeing the nihilistic and the complete deconstructive aspect of it. But we've been talking a lot about the ideas that survive into the modern day. And that is because we are experiencing them now through the filter of applied postmodernism. And that is that we haven't covered all the different aspects of postmodernism, and a lot of those ideas don't have utility in the way that they're being politically actionable now through the lens of intersectionality and other ways of approaching these issues. But the next chapter is going to dive into applied postmodernism, how these ideas have then shaped what we have experiencing today on Facebook, on Twitter, and Thanksgiving dinner. So any other things about the question about isn't postmodernism dead? I think that's where the next chapter is going to take us.
The real deal, well, it's not dead because all sorts of people still love it. There's a thing like you see capital P postmodernism, the movement of these guys is they all died out. There hasn't really been new writers in it. Some people will point to Zizek, but they'll say Zizek just regurgitates all of these guys' stuff. So he's not like putting new postmodernism out there. So there's small P postmodernism of just the continuing of the ideas. And we're still in the middle, but we're living in it. We're living in the postmodern era. We're dealing with people who push it out there. But a real deal postmodernist is going to say, yes, it's dead because these guys aren't doing it. The real deal postmodern, but they are using ideas that came from it. So that's why postmodern neo-Marxism still fits accurate. They're pulling ideas from it, but are they doing it exactly right? No.
So what I want to have viewers come away with this episode is like, what are some of the slogans or principles now that viewers can say, oh, that's a postmodern concept?
Nothing is true. Everything is permitted.
Different ways of knowing and my lived experience.
You're just a straight white male, like you might hear floating around everywhere.
Okay, so anytime people are invoking notions of privilege and societal hierarchy, then they're trying to place you in a power structure that they can then use to either elevate or delegitimize your perspective, rather than judging your perspective on the merits of what your argument is in and of itself. So that's power dynamics is another way to say that. If they've injected power dynamics into your discussion.
That's just a social construct. These norms are just a social construct.
Okay.
Like,
The thing is, they say that certain things are social constructs, and a lot of times they can be. They'll say that like gender roles are a social construct, and to some degree, gender roles are socially, or at least gender presentation. Like men don't wear skirts in America, but in Scotland they have kilts. That's a socially constructed gender norm. But it also, they take it for granted that a social construct means bad.
usually when they're bringing it up.
Yeah.
But
Either bad or arbitrary, which means that you could have a different one.
it's oppressive. The category is oppressive.
They'll say things like the age of consent is a social construct. I'm fine with that. I'm totally fine with. So, and obviously there's other things that go into it, like psychology and things like that. But I am fine with setting a boundary, and that boundary on age of consent, very conservative.
I think that's why we're getting a lot of evolutionary psychologists, evolutionary biologists like Godsad, Eric Weinstein, whose voice is becoming more centered in our modern discourses because they're answering that question a little bit. They're saying that, yes, different societies have different things that are socially constructed, but what results is actually more advantageous to the stability and efficacy and progress of a society than others. And so when you look at things like monogamy, certain aspects of sexual morality, nuclear family dynamics, all those things survive and flourish within a society because they tend to promote a more stable family unit that then can generate and accumulate wealth and pass that on to the next generation. And so several generations down, the segments of society that implemented those advantageous yet arbitrary social constructs will have a footprint that's bigger because of the benefit that they provide to the people who adopt them. And so looking at these things through an evolutionary lens gives you a different way to say, wait a second, even though something may be socially constructed and in a sense has a degree of arbitrariness, if it provides a competitive advantage to the replication and passing on to the next generation, then it's going to have a utility to it.
Yeah, that's what I usually say. Like the people who answered the postmodernists best did it 60, 70 years before them, the new pragmatists in the United States, who they figured out the problems of epistemology, and they realized that one of the answers to that big problem was running into evolutionary problems. There's a biological and genetic substrates to some of the stuff that aren't just social constructs. But some of the things that they'll say to that, like you might hear somebody say that you're a biological essentialist and say it with a sneer. That means you're a bad person.
Yeah. Because you don't hold to the notion that every individual is essentially determined by the social construct into which they come into the world, and it kind of determines who and what they are based on their place in society, rather than having something inherent to their biology, which takes part in shaping their identity and their place in society.
Yeah, it's chicken and egg, but both are there. And the social constructivists barely want to acknowledge that the biological side is there. But no, it's all got, yes, there is social construct in everything, but there is biological construct in everything. It's not so simply explained away or so easily to socially engineer. They want to say it's social constructivism because we can now engineer it in different ways, and we don't even have to pay attention at all to that reality side.
Yeah. That's a good point. All right. Any other slogans that tend to pop up in the modern era that we want to make sure that people can recognize?
Let's unpack this.
Oh, yeah. That deconstruct, just the word deconstruction and unpacking this is one, because when somebody says let's unpack that, they're essentially just saying let's deconstruct that.
Yeah.
Systems, not people. We're going to attack systems, not the people. And usually when they say that, they are not very good at holding to that. Foucault would have been better at it than they are, but they'll say it anyway.
Yeah.
And just with all of these things, there's a grain of truth in every one of them. It's just how extreme do you want that to dominate the way that you treat those particular issues.
And it gets in hands of different people who have different levels of cynicism or even understanding of a thing. How is it going to play out when they go to use it? Because maybe Foucault was more careful in how he worded things, but one game of telephone and it's already attacked the people of the system.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure he was down with attacking the people of the system.
Yeah, but you'll get some arguer who'll say, look at the exact writings of what exactly he said in this book here.
Yeah, as though he would not hide his more radical views and perspectives.
Yeah.
All right, guys, thank you so much for, I'm sorry for using gendered language. All right, people, thank you for going on this journey of the first chapter of social injustice. And I think it's time to close this down. And next time we get together, we'll look at chapter 2, where we look at the applied turn of postmodernism. So until then, this has been Talk on Things and Stuff.